Yo, Blaze,
Yo, what's good, Tone? Get in here.
you trying to burn?
You already late. You already know.
I know, brother. Light that thing up.
You trying to burn?
I'm trying to burn. My guy.
My man. So we're getting ready to start this episode. What's this, 8 now?
Episode 8. Can you believe that?
Episode 8 of the You Trying to Burn journey with Tone and Blaze. This shit's getting real epic, man. It's starting to feel...
It feels like the cipher's growing, right?
Right, the cipher's growing and it's starting to feel like a permanent staple of my life. You know what I mean? Like it's starting to feel like this is it.
This is what we do.
Or at least the beginning of it is, man. You know,
actually, I've been making schedules around this. I'm like, nah, I can't do Monday from this time to this time. I can't do anything.
Same, man. You know, my daily grind. These guys want to get together, celebrating somebody's birthday, and they're all, hey, we got to get to the bar around the corner. My man, not this Monday or any Monday.
Or any Monday.
Because I got bigger fish to fry. I got people that are hitting me up that are trying to burn. I got family and friends hitting me up because they're trying to burn. I got Tone hitting me up because he's trying to burn. You know,
all the time.
And guess what? I'm trying to burn too. So
all the time.
Fuck a beer. I'm good. I'm gonna spark
man,
up.
I wish you liked beer because I freaking love beer, man.
I do like beer, but
I love it.
You know,
I'm not a fan of the IPAs though.
So for me, I can't drink beer anymore. You know, I had weight loss surgery 8 years ago, and you can't drink carbonated beverages anymore, you know, which was a little bit of a burn, man, because if you know anything about beer, you spend a lot of your adult manhood life finding your beer, right? Because beer, you're like, this, I want this to be good, but it's not that good. This one's all right. I want it, but something about you wants it to be good.
Oh, you're so right about that.
And then once you find your beer, you're like, this is my beer. Or if you find your couple, right? Like I had a few of go-tos for myself, and I felt like it took me longer than the average cat to find my beer because
What was your style of beer? Pilsner, IPA?
Well, I love IPAs, but not just any IPA, right? So there's certain ones.
There's like a cult with the IPAs, man.
So there's certain ones that I like that I've tried over the years, and my buddy told me he used to brew his own beer, and so right now I can't remember because again I don't drink beer. It's been 8 years, you know. I had like 2 beers in that time because every now and again I can, you know, have one,
sneak one in, yeah.
And my buddy told me every time he gives me different IPAs, I always like, you know, like a strain. And there's a certain type of one that's brewed a certain type of way that always leaves this similar, I guess, like flavor profile and aftertaste that I'm drawn to, sort of like coffee. You know, I love bitter, dark roast coffee. You know what I mean? While other people are like, God, I can't even smell that without, you know, feeling like I got to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? I'm like, you're weak. That's all. You know, I like, so the same thing with beer, you know,
levels are low. You know, you got to step your caffeine.
Very similarly to what we're going to touch on with this episode. Like we mentioned last week, talking about terpenes, terpene profiles, and live resin. Very similarly with the beer and the hop, whether it's a barley or, you know, whatever it is that they're using as their base for their beer, right? Whatever they're fermenting, right? And we're drawn to that terpene profile, whether we know it or not, whatever one that speaks to us, right? It ain't just, if it was just the buzz, right? Anybody would drink anything or smoke anything because that's all it's about. But it's not about that. And the older you get, the more you realize it's about so much more than that, right? Because I can go out and get wasted on some Mad Dog 2020. But
I
guess
love
what?
Some Mad Dog 2020,
when I was 17,
Come
maybe.
on, man, some MD 20s.
So I could go do that, but the price I'll pay physically later won't be worth it, right? So for me, at my age, now if I want to actually have a drink, I'm looking for a real oaky bourbon or whiskey or rye or, you know, something, Scotch whiskey, something that's got a real good barrel, you know, that oaky that barrel flavor, that wood
aged fermented barrel,
like that
oaky.
wood flavor infused into the liquor. And the more I taste that, the more it screams at me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, man, it's so good.
Do you like the burnt flavors as well too?
I do when it comes to
like a whiskey or like a rye whiskey,
a whiskey or a Scotch or rye for sure.
So Scotch, like Johnny Walker, I can drink it, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. I like more of like a single malt Irish whiskey.
So I'm more of a fan of Canadian whiskey or American whiskey, but not
Japanese
like Jack
whiskey's
Daniels.
good too.
I don't mess with anything like Jack
thing lights you
Daniels,
up.
Jim Beam, Old Granddad, none of that shit. As far as American whiskey, Knob Creek. Shout out to Knob Creek. This is a plug, and if you're listening, we love you. Even though I don't drink that much, when I have a choice, you already know what I'm doing. My other American would be like Buffalo Trace.
Never heard of that one.
That one's a really good one as well. My go-to, right? Because it's everywhere. You can get it everywhere. Some places don't got Buffalo Trace. Some places don't got Knob Creek. But they all got Crown Royal. Right?
Crown Royal is the truth.
Right. That's a Canadian whiskey.
Love it.
And, you know, I'm not even a fan of all the trends with the flavors. They're okay. Right. Like I'm a fan. Like I love peaches. It's my favorite fruit. I love peach Crown Royal, but that's not a cool drink to me. However, I think they should. Somebody needs to create a Long Island iced tea style drink made with peach Crown and call it peach Snapple. Shout out to bartenders if you're listening. There you go.
Make that happen and invite us to the party.
Right. Yeah. You know, Long Island iced tea, peach Snapple, bro. You can't miss with that, you know? Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that.
It's crazy you just said that because we just made a peach iced tea at home and I might just mix some rum or some bourbon with that, you know, make like a fun little drink with it.
I have some peach Crown in the freezer right now. Tone, it's made for that peach, whatever the drink you just said. Tea with a peach tea.
Peach tea, yeah.
Right. That'd be great with a little peach Crown in it on the rocks, sitting on the porch. Man, that's all. I might
have to take some of your peach and try that out.
All good, brother. Just leave a couple of bucks in the freezer.
I got you. Don't worry. Keep the bucks cold, keep the ice cold, keep the liquor cold.
Yeah? Right. You know, and it's so wild that as we're talking about liquor and beer, those flavors that speak to us is very much just like our coffees, right? And if you dig into that, it's going to be whatever terpene profiles came with that plant that end up adding to the notes of the coffees we love. And moving on to what we're here for, trying to burn, my man, is live resin versus hash rosin, right? And talked about it last week. It starts with the plant, right? And the terpene profile in that plant. Now, I do have an article I'm going to reference here in a little bit. I have to pull it back up after we're done burning.
Absolutely.
But there's some points on there that I wanted to talk about, right? When it gets into the terpene profiles of the plant, one of the things the article mentioned was that rosin or resin, either one, can be extracted by the live plant, you know, the cured plant, keef, or even hash, right? They can use those to extract further, right?
The one thing I noticed with all of those points that you just mentioned, each one of those things have a high THC content.
100%. When we talk about live resin today, the reason we say live is because we're specifically speaking of the live plant version. Right. And when we say live rosin or live hash rosin, is because we're talking about the live plant, right? We're not talking about taking cured buds that you and I could break up and smoke and using that to extract, which you can, but the reason basically trending downwards, right? And live extractions are the way to go because what we've learned with these terpene profiles, well, one, we're discovering new terpenes every day. You know, you can research it. In New Jersey, you'll see a lot of the packaging will literally come with the terpene profile or the dominant terpene profile that's in that plant.
What's the difference between like live resin and hash live rosin?
Right. So before we fuck this up,
or I butcher it again,
right?
Or call it some shit that is not even
right.
Close
he be making
to
shit up. I'm like, when we find that extraction, I'm in.
I'm like, yo, what's the concentrate you got today?
Right.
Like, what the fuck is that?
He's like, why ain't it just called hash? I hear you, man. But the main difference between the two is just the extraction process. Anything that's resin or live resin is going to be using some sort of solvent, right? So butane or propane, which is then removed from the finished product before consumption. When it comes to rosin, it's a solventless extraction process. That's the main difference. And depending on the setup, the extraction company or the person doing the work, either one rivals the other in quality. You know, you can have a resin that's better than a lot of hash rosins out there, but that's probably because the extraction process, person, company, place, the plant used, there's a lot of variables, but done right, you know, both of them, it could basically be up to the end user. What do you prefer, right? Now, having to be a little bit more expensive. Right. Yep. Because it's a little bit less yield percentage wise from if you started with the same amount.
And I could see how some people would at that point just prefer, I like the way this tastes a little bit better versus that. Or I like the way that I catch the head high a little bit faster with this versus that. You know, and the difference is really going to be up to that person.
Just like any flower, right? If you're not a sativa flower guy, you're probably not going to be a sativa concentrate guy, you know? So again, you're looking for that. What I was saying, the reason it's leaning towards the live version is because what we've learned about terpene. And we've learned that even when you grow a plant beautifully and perfectly and come up with this delicious exotics like this shit that we're smoking right now, right? Once you cut that plant, and you have to cure it, right? You can't, we all know that everybody knows who smokes. They've gotten a bag of some shit that smelled like lawn or way too much plant matter. Like, why does this smell green?
Like earthy.
Yeah, it smells like
pure
plants.
earth.
Like I always compare it to like fresh lawn. It should smell like pure gas,
like
right?
Pure cut grass.
And, the reason for that is because they didn't cure it long enough. They cut it down and, you know, maybe the buds were more dense than their last batch or whatever reason, right? I tend to think it's because people run out of money, but that's another episode. Once you cure it, to allow it to dry and all the remaining water to evaporate out of the plant, you're left with these delicious sticky nugs. They're sticky because what's left is the resin, the resin droplets, or THC molecules that are on the plant, but also THCA, CBDA, CBG, Delta 8, Delta 9, it's all part of it, right? If you were to use that finished product, you're losing a lot of the terpene profile of the plant by the time it gets to that point. And that's what we've learned more recently with like what you said about the taste, you know, what people love about that flavor. And a lot of times it's because your favorite strain tone, you probably don't even know what it actually tastes because you've never tried that strain in a hash rosin form or a high quality live resin form because that's cut from a fresh plant, right? Fresh from the grow. However, if it's hydro, organic with soil, whatever your grow type is, once your plant is ready to cut, extractors now they use a cryogenic, freeze or a deep freeze option and they immediately flash freeze that shit like vegetables. Like you get, like they do on a farm to preserve the freshness of vegetables so they can get it to the masses, right? It's a flash frozen.
From Cali to New York and still be fresh.
Right, without losing any, texture, flavor, quality. It's immediately preserves everything good about it. And it's the same process that we're using with cannabis now. So imagine finding out that my favorite strain is going to be like Hindu Kush, right? One of the best strains I ever smoked, but I've never had the concentrate form, right? So imagine losing about 35+% of the full profile of a plant. You try the rosin form of your favorite strain, you're going to really love it. And you might not like the cured product anymore because you're like, man, you almost feel swindled a little bit. Like, man, I've been smoking Hindu Kush, or let's go back in the day when sour diesel was the craze. It was around everywhere. And it was good diesel, right? That shit smelled like diesel and it was gassy. You couldn't,
couldn't even have a little
nug
bag
in your
on
car,
you,
right? Because you smell like a skunk's asshole everywhere you went, right?
Yo, it was crazy.
So imagine the first time I tried true sour diesel live hash rosin.
That must have been the freshest smell.
So one, it tastes like
pure. Like, forget it.
They're like, my buddy's like, taste this. You're gonna love it. Trust me, it's something I know you like. Now we all know I don't like sativas, and anybody who smokes, sour diesel is a sativa. But let's be real, the true old school sour diesel used to smoke like Kush and hit you really fucking hard and will put your ass to bed if you went too hard with it. So it wasn't your average sativa, right? So let me just throw that out there, right? I'm not trying to be contradictory. I don't like sativa. Sour diesel was my shit. Not anymore, right? I'm too old for that shit, right? Anyway, the first time I smoked that concentrate, I'm like, oh my God, what is this? It's familiar, but I couldn't. They're like, you don't know what it is? And they're like, trust me, you know what it is. I'm like, I don't know what this is, man. And you know me, Tone. I could smell, I could look at a bag and smell a jar and I can tell you if it's made for me or not.
Like a budhound.
Right, like a budhound. Ain't not a bloodhound, a budhound. Right. I will smell a bag or a jar and I'm like, it smells amazing, but the sativa content on here, and they're like, how can you tell? Everybody says it. I'm like, listen, I can't explain how. It's just experience, but I know what I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
for and what I'm looking to
Mm-hmm.
avoid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But
You just have
imagine
those flavor
smoking that
profiles
first hash
memorized.
rosin and finding out that it was sour diesel. It tasted like something completely different with a familiar taste. Now, when he said sour diesel, it hit me like a ton of bricks, but it was way more depth to the flavor. Not only is it a concentrate, so, you know, it smacks you literally like a ton of bricks right in the fucking face. As soon as you take one dab, you choke your fucking balls off and you're like, what was that? You know what I mean? And sour diesel, because we lose a good chunk of the terpene profile when we do different things to the plant. And so that is one of the main reasons, or the main reason, why most people, while live is trending up and cured product turning it into a hash, like we used to use trim to make bubble hash, right? Bubble hash is now a process of hash rosin, but they ain't using trim or bud or nugs or shake. That shit's all cured. They'll use that to make edibles or distillate, what I hate, right? I don't like distillate. People love it. I'm like, I hate it.
Yeah.
And every time I get a good one,
it's almost like a byproduct.
It feels like it to me. You know, it doesn't feel, to me, distillate is for a lot of people. It's not for me, but I would mostly want to use it for edibles or something along them lines. I wouldn't want to smoke it. Okay, and like I said, Tone, I wanted to reference an article from precisionextraction.com. Maybe I should smoke later. And it's basically live resin versus live resin. And what's the difference, which was your question. So when it comes to cannabis extracts, there are many forms to choose from: isolate, shatter, live resin, rosin, sugar, batter, distillate, etc. But what's the difference between live rosin and live resin? Unlike smoking weed or flower, both live rosin and live resin are concentrated, potent extracts that utilize the natural resin found in the cannabis plant to create a connoisseur level concentrate experience. The key difference between rosin and resin are the way in which they are extracted. What is live resin? Well, the characteristics of live resin after it's extracted is soft and pliable, has a lovely amber color and a sugary texture. It's incredibly potent and it's often seen as a high-end product. It can be turned into various types of products, including diamonds, sauce, batter, wax, sugars, and cartridge. All can be filled with live resin instead of distillate. How to extract live resin, which is the main difference that we were talking about earlier. The extraction process for live resin is complicated, requires a unique skill set. The whole plant's cryogenically frozen immediately after harvest. Later, the live resin extracted using a light hydrocarbon solvent, usually like butane or propane, which is then removed. The process is more complex than other extractions as it requires special equipment as well as the solvents, which are very dangerous to use. And what does it taste like? Well, live resin is beloved by cannabis and hemp experts because of the exquisite taste and color. It doesn't really explain what that means. It means that you're tasting the full profile of the plant, right? You're tasting parts that you never tasted by burning it in a paper or bowl bong or other means of cured cannabis use. So you're getting the full profile. So if you looked up any of your favorite strains and it tells you all the hints and notes and the terpenes that are specific, you're going to get those flavors all combined into one delicious taste. And so that's really what the flavor is. So I joke around and I say, it tastes like the best weed you ever smoked ever, right? The best herb that you've ever tasted, because it's not like distillate. It tastes like cannabis, right? So that's my opinion. And I think most real herb heads would agree with that, right? So live rosin, which is live hash rosin or just rosin. What are the characteristics? Well, live rosin is skillfully crafted from proper material. It creates a product that rivals even the best solvent-based cannabis extracts. The final consistency will be determined by how the rosin is finished. Most producers will opt for the common cold cure finish that creates a batter style consistency. Seen below is it also can be turned into vape cartridges, altering the consistency. How do they make live rosin? Well, rosin extraction occurs by applying high heat and pressure to fresh buds, hash, or keef to release the resin from the plant. This resin contains high amounts of THC and CBD, making it a potent product. But what we talked about was live hash rosin. So the step in that process is basically taking a cold water bubble hash or a cold water extracted hash, and they're using that in a micron bag and a heat press to squish out the live hash rosin, which is what most people are talking about when they say rosin. And that's where the whole kind of community is leaning towards, just because, again, you're losing zero terpenes, zero of the profile. All of the active and psychoactive chemicals are intact. And so that's why the cured version is fading away, right? It doesn't really go into that with the article. What does it taste like? Again, I'll tell you, it tastes like the best herb you ever tasted. The taste of a live rosin product is directly related to the quality of the input material. I agree with that. Put good in, you get good out. If high quality hash is pressed utilizing the proper parameters, the output will mimic the exact aroma and flavor of the live plant in its final moments before harvest. Again, the top of the plant's potent smell and taste right there. That's what it's trying to mimic. I love it. If lower quality hash or flowers are utilized, a lower quality output product will result, ultimately diminishing the ability of the process to create a top tier product. Live rosin is typically consumed as a dab. So again, ultimately the difference between live resin and live rosin is it comes down to the extraction method. While people will pit resin versus rosin, the end product is a key determining factor in which to produce, with rosin commanding higher prices on dispensary shelves. And we're going to leave it up to you listeners to hash it out and let us know what you think. I'm team hash rosin all day. And what that means to me, Tone, that's really kind of getting into the technical side of it and a deeper explanation. But when it comes to like more specific, I personally prefer a fresh press hash rosin, which is basically the product that's squished out, right, from the pressed hash, not uncured. I prefer to cure it myself and whip it up myself and try to get to that end product, the cured product myself. And so anything that you've kind of had while we were hanging out was always either a cold cure or a fresh press that I cured up here myself and from a high quality process. That's my preference. And I feel like those, when you get your hands on fresh press, it's hard to get. Those are really some of the best that you're going to get to ever smoke. Personally, somebody to come up with some real good shit and let me try it.
Shit, because I'm trying to burn.
Right. Trying to burn?
I'm trying to burn. I think I might have a little bit of a better understanding on this whole live resin, live rosin thing. Especially with the way you touched up on that article and how it all kind of explained it in a way that made real good sense in a way that we use it every day. I really like that. And I like the insights that it's providing me now that I'm not only a user of it, but I've used both sides of it. The resin, the rosin, the pens, the dabs, I've experienced it in multiple ways. And I think now it really starts to make sense. As I start to see them, I'll start to understand, oh yeah, that's a live fresh press.
Right. You can stop being disrespectful.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that that's all we're going to give them today. We're gonna wrap it up, me and Tone, for this episode. If you guys want to read the article, we're gonna post the link in the description for precisionextraction.com.
Yo, and thank you for taking the time to drop those knowledge nuggets on us to kind of hash out what this whole, live resin, hash rosin, new wave that's coming that people are experiencing, that people are just going to be learning about now, or just pure players in the game that just might have some confusion as to what things are, when they see them on the shelf. Or when somebody says, hey, I got this. And when they really look at it, they can be like, that's really, not what I'm looking for.
Right. It's good to just kind of educate yourself. You know what I mean? And it's newer on the East Coast, man. This wave crashed out West a long time ago. I've been smoking rosin for years.
How many years have we been dabbing? At least 5-6 years.
Long time.
Say,
Yeah, it's been a while. Once it started becoming strain specific, I was in.
Yeah. And look, 5-6 years, and I'm still like, that shit is all the same.
Right. This guy, disrespectful. Anyway, we want to thank all of our listeners for tapping in for another episode. You Trying to Burn with Tony Blaze. Make sure you hit us up on our TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram, or our email. We're youtryingtoburn@gmail.com. And definitely, if you're trying to get down on that cipher, throw something on Patreon. Hit us up. We love y'all.